Feel free if you have, if you'd like to turn on your video, we'd love to see you. If not, that's totally okay. We're also looking at the chat, so if you do have questions throughout, and we will have a sort of Q&A time at the end. So let's see. We have a PowerPoint that we'll go through, but at the moment, I just wanted to take a minute and introduce some of our people who will be presenting. So my name is Nick. My pronouns are he, him. I do the admissions here at the School of Social Welfare. I'm also a recent graduate as well. So happy to kind of speak about the recent grad experience and also, from the admissions perspective as well. Let's see, Crystal, I see you are next.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Crystal Rogers. My pronoun are she, her. I am the Associate Dean for Academic Programs, which basically means I oversee the bachelor's, master's, and PhD program here at the school. I'm very happy to be here this afternoon, and look forward to engaging with you all for an hour and a half. Thanks.
And how about Geraldine?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Geraldine Gutierrez. I'm the Student Services and Retention Coordinator here at the School of Social Welfare. I really support and help our graduate students get through their program, providing academic advisement and oversight, and just supporting you through your process, mostly on the academic side, but I will often work with the field office just to make sure you all are set up for success as future prospective students. So thank you so much for taking some time to meet with us all.
And Lisa.
Hey everyone, my name is Lisa DeLaMater. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am the Assistant Dean and Director of Field Education for the BSW and the MSW program. Nice to see you.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. So nice to see some familiar faces, some new faces. And, I've interfaced with many of you all. And, as you're kind of going into the program, and if you choose to attend, I'm sure you'll be sort of interfacing with Dr. Rogers, Geraldine, Lisa, and many others as well. So welcome. And we also have Aaliyah as well, one of our students who might be joining in a little bit later. But for now, I will start our screen share. Let's see. Actually, let's just connect with you all. Where are you all coming from today? If you could type in the chat, feel free to type in the chat. Where are you coming from? New York City, Boston, I don't know, Albany. Caitlin says Albany. Indiana, wow. Oneonta. Hey, David. Hello, David. New York City, Queens. Wow, so a few people from New York City. Kingston, hey, Teddy. Imani. Westchester, Long Island. Wow, so all over, a lot of upstate New York, downstate. And let's see. Are people, oh, that's awesome. Colette, Albany, awesome. Are you, how many people here are, in school still, in college? How many people are, maybe working or not out of college? Yeah, several hands. I'm working, several hands are like, I'm working, out of, returning student. Currently a senior. Oh, Benjamin, yeah, you're non-degree, that's awesome. Full-time. So a few seniors, awesome. Foster care, very social work. Awesome. Congratulations, Nicole, on just graduating. Well, so cool. We have an awesome range of people. So welcome, welcome. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you all more in the admissions process and hearing more of your stories as well. So, all right, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. This is being recorded. We will post the recording itself on our website and send it out to you all as well, so that you can rewatch it if you need and things like that. Feel free if you do have small questions in the sort of in the in-between, like while we're going through the slides, feel free to type in the chat. We'll leave the bigger sort of questions until later. Can everybody see this? Seeing some, make sure that everybody can see that. Somehow my video is, there we go. I'll see you all. Any thumbs up? Cool, I see some thumbs up. Awesome. So yeah, welcome to the School of Social Welfare. This is some things that we'll be going over today. We're going to go a little bit about the School of Social Welfare. We'll talk about the MSW program, sort of the curriculum. We'll talk about field work, what field work might look like. We'll talk about some, tuition, scholarships, housing. We'll also touch on the application process, what that looks like. And then we'll get into some questions, your questions. We'll get into some questions if you have any questions for Aaliyah, our students. So yeah. So our SSW mission, this is our School of Social Welfare's mission. As you can, I've highlighted some words here. As you can see, we are really grounded in social justice, equity, looking towards human well-being, and I like to say sort of enacting social welfare through social work, right? So the overall equity in the world through social work. So this is our mission. This is kind of, and we'll get back to this throughout sort of the admissions process, what we're sort of looking for as well. Faculty and staff. This is a little bit more about the School of Social Welfare itself. We have really awesome faculty and staff. Some of you who might have joined on a little early might have seen the video of faculty and staff sharing some of the things that they're really passionate about. They're highly ranked for research in the nation, for their research. We have a really awesome, diverse faculty and staff, background, and their interests, all sorts of different ways. Faculty engage, so many different, like I said, research areas. We have faculty in, who are researching, aging adults, older adults, HIV, like people with HIV. So a whole different large range of different areas. And we have lots of structures of support in the student body, which you'll be hearing much more about from Geraldine, Crystal, myself, the field office, in the next few slides. Yeah, anything to mention here, Dr. Rogers, Geraldine? No, pretty good.
You did a good job, Dick.
Cool.
Carry on.
Yeah. So for some reason, I can't see everybody. I have another screen up here, which I can kind of see you, but not everybody. So working with what we got. Location, another sort of about us in the School of Social Welfare. We're located right here at UAlbany, on the downtown campus of UAlbany. So it's, even closer to the capital of New York State, which is Albany, right here in downtown. And that allows us to have a lot of placements, a big variety of different placements because we are the capital of New York State. We have a lot of clinical placements, but we also have a lot of macro placements, more, doing policy, doing nonprofit advocacy, doing advocacy or community organizing. So we'll get into some more of that, of what that looks like in the program itself. But, just part of our location, just being the capital of New York State, we have a lot more opportunities to offer both on field, in your coursework, So yeah, and also being located on the downtown campus, it's only like, let's say 6 or 7 buildings here on the downtown campus. And one of the buildings is all of your coursework, and the other building is all of your faculty and staff. So you, even though UAlbany is a big university, you get that sort of smaller feel in the School of Social Welfare. So, and so finally, what do social workers do? And then I'll pass the torch off to Dr. Rogers, Geraldine. So social workers, as many of you might already know, we have a lot of different roles. I mentioned, macro, I mentioned macro being more of the nonprofit management advocacy, policy making, micro being more of the clinical sort of side of things. So more working with individuals, families, groups. And so you have all of that encompasses social work. So, things like, providing social services and a social service agency, maybe for maybe doing therapy, doing case management, connecting people with resources. That's a lot of clinical skills. Maybe being a school social worker in a nursing home, hospital, a lot of sort of clinical things. More macro, maybe doing, working in a nonprofit agency, doing policy advocacy, community organizing. So whole different range of settings, populations, as many of you probably already know. And we can definitely, happy to talk if you all are, we'll get more into this in the sort of Q&A section, but happy to talk if you are interested more in learning more about the differences between social work and other professions, or, more of the, we'll definitely touch on more of that micro macro and what that means in field and in coursework. So yeah. So an overview of the MSW program. I'm going to pass it off over to Geraldine and Dr. Rogers to, take us through some of this, these next couple slides. So yeah.
Yeah, all right. I guess I will start. Hello once again. As I said, my name is Krista Rogers. I'm the Associate Dean. I have a question to ask. Actually, I just noticed that my daughter has started her piano lessons. So, yeah. Is the piano in the background too much? No, it's manageable?
No, I can hardly hear it.
Okay, that's good. All right, luckily we're in the later years, so she's pretty good by now, so. Okay, and also just before we start, I really like to just, one of the things I really enjoy is getting to know our students and having our students get to know me. And I find that it's been somewhat challenging in kind of a COVID and a virtual environment, but I'm going to give it my best shot anyway. All right. So I am a triple UAlbany alum. I got my bachelor's from UAlbany. I got my master's in social work from UAlbany, and I also got my PhD from UAlbany. I actually started my MSW program on a full-time basis. And then after 2 years, I accelerated and completed the MSW, or went to MSWs on a full-time basis. In the last year of my MSW program, I applied and was accepted into the joint MSW PhD program. And part of the reason why I share this with you is because, from both a lived experience and from, again, kind of the professional experience, I have, experience with various aspects of the program on a part-time, full-time, and even as like a joint and dual degree student. And I always carry that experience as a student, what it was like to go through our programs. I carry that with me, and that really helps to inform many of my decisions. So students and that student experience is always at the forefront of my job and how I interact with anyone at the School of Social Welfare and at the university. Even my dissertation was about predictors of satisfaction for our MSW students. So I really am very committed all around to having our students have a wonderful, wonderful experience. So that's just a little bit about me. So an overview of our MSW program. So we are accredited by the Council on Social Work Education, that's CSWE. And that's a really important distinction, okay? CSWE, they set the standards for social work education nationwide. So by having a degree from a program that's accredited with CSWE, what it means is that your degree, your MSW, will be recognized nationally. Okay, and it prepares you to sit for the licensing exams or certification exams with various states. So whether you're looking at this program or at other programs, even if you're looking at other disciplines, always ask if the school is accredited and who's the accrediting body, okay? Because that is a really, really important aspect, something to know, an important variable to know about the program that you're going to enter. The MSW program here is for the part-time and full-time students. It's a 60 credit hour program. Okay? The first 31 credits of that program are considered your generalist years. Those are the building blocks, the foundation of your social work education, where you take courses in, say, understanding human behavior, both the typical development and the, what we call the air quotes, atypical development, understanding about assessment and interaction and engagement across systems with individuals, families, organizations, communities. We will also give you some about the history of social work, about social welfare policy and services, and some introduction to research as well. So again, this is kind of your building blocks of a social work education. Once students complete their first year, they then move on into what we call the advanced concentration year, where some students will choose a clinical track and other students will choose a macro concentration. And as Nick gave us, an idea of some of those things that you can do clinically, the clinical concentration is really going to prepare you more for therapeutic or clinical social work, right? So more, again, that therapeutic milieu. Whereas macro concentration prepares you for working with larger systems. Policy practice, community organizing, organizational change, all right? We have some students who intern at the legislature. So these are, again, just some of the options after you finish your generalist year of what our students can do, all right? Geraldine, do you have anything else to add?
In terms of the content, I think you covered it pretty thoroughly. Thank you for introducing all of us more to who Crystal Rogers is. I also am, double graduate, undergraduate psychology major, and then moved on to a master's in social work because I was very quickly recruited to engage in this field, and I'm really happy about that decision. So yeah, that was comprehensive. I don't have anything more to add.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe in some of the next ones, we'll talk about driver's seat, our analogy that we said.
Yep, absolutely. Next slide, Nick. Okay, actually, Geraldine, why don't you want to take this one?
So our program models often are kind of like the building blocks and your trajectory within the program. So we'll often share program models of the typical full-time program, part-time program, advanced standing, and dual degrees, which are two that we haven't spoken of yet. So some of you I see here, some I've engaged with via email are students that have taken part, enrolled in our non-degree classes. So that's a great way to get introduced into our program as a non-degree student, non-matriculated. It's a way for you to take some of those generalist courses that Crystal spoke of and kind of become aware of the program. It's kind of, you're not matriculated, so you're not a full-time matriculated graduate student. You haven't been accepted to the program, but you are taking courses within the social work school. You're taking courses with social work students that have already been accepted. You're getting to know our faculty, our instructors, some adjuncts. So it's a great opportunity to kind of see if you're ready for graduate level work, if you really enjoy the program, right? That's really important. If you find some peers that you can relate to and really can connect to who may already be in the field. It's also a great way to build connections with instructors. You know, they could write you reference letters. So some of you may be engaged with a non-degree program already, which is great. And there's a maximum of 12 credits, or that's 4 classes that you can take to transfer into the school based on certain premise. I believe it's if it's been within 3 years, if you've gotten a B in the courses or above. So non-degree is a great way to, you know, kind of really gauge, are you ready for the program? Are you enjoying it? And a way to kind of get ahead and decrease your course load once you are accepted as a student. And the full-time program is a 2-year program. The first year, as Crystal mentioned, is generalist, kind of the basics of social work history, policy, kind of beginning the approaches of the clinical approaches and research. And the second year, you pick your concentration, which can be micro or macro. Typically, the full-time program is 4 courses plus field. So it is pretty intensive, which is why I said taking the 4 classes through non-degree really helps you kind of take off at least 1 class each semester, more or less. So it is, you know, intensive. So 4 courses plus field, and field is typically 2 days a week. And then, yeah, field instruction throughout the 2 semesters, which make up 1 academic year, and field during the second year also. The part-time program is at a kind of a, not as an accelerated pace, so it's lower pace. It's a 4-year program. There's 2 courses each semester, and there are summer courses. And field instruction is during years 2 and 4. So you go 1 year, complete 2 classes per semester, some summer classes. The second year, you do your first year of field. The third year, you do some more coursework. And this 4th year, you do some coursework with field. So, you know, sometimes we have students that start out in the part-time program. Really, oftentimes it's catered for people who are working and really want to just take a slower pace, really want to take their time and complete the program within that time frame, and that's okay for them. Sometimes students may start at full-time, and then they realize, okay, 4 courses plus field, let's say you weren't a non-degree student, feels like a lot. There's ways, especially in my role, I can help navigate, hey, I'm starting full-time, it's been 1 year in the program, I'm feeling this is very overwhelming, I can do it, but I just want to slow down my pace. We can alter your sequence of courses. It is very sequential. Our courses, like, you have to take 1 in order to proceed to this next course. So it's really important for you to communicate and, you know, stay in your courses. If you want to, or considering how to drop courses, always just confer with your advisors and with myself, just to make sure that you're staying on track. We want to set you all for success. And that's just to say, just because you started in one path doesn't mean you can't switch over. And there's been folks that even switch over and then switch back when they're ready to accelerate, or there's been changes in their life. So there's always, you know, for the most part, there's a solution. Advanced standing. So Nick, do you think there's some advanced standing folks perspective in here? Okay, that's great. So advanced standing is for those who have enrolled and completed their bachelor's in social work. So I call it the marathon, the advanced standing program, because you finish in the spring and then you start off classes in the summer, right after you finish undergrad, or perhaps maybe you took a break between the time of finishing your undergraduate degree and then coming back to your graduate degree. But if you didn't, it just rolls right into the summer, fall, and then spring. So you have 3 semesters, 1 calendar year to complete your master's degree. You come in with credits from your undergraduate degree, which is excellent. And then you have 1 year field, potentially 3 semesters, 2.5 semesters, 3 semesters, I really. And then there's the dual degree programs. So we have criminal justice, public health, Albany law, the MSW and PhD program. So these are also great opportunities. There's many of the schools around our downtown campus or the public health campus that we have partnered with and kind of adjusted our program to be able to combine the 2 programs and have 2 degrees that you earn. And a lot of our MSW students, you know, we really like to see who's really excited academically because the MSW PhD, some people didn't even know that that was an option. So that's something that you can also explore. So if you had any questions about, oh, what does that look like? You know, I really encourage you to talk to Nick and see, you know, what you should be looking to do for those programs. Crystal.
I just wanted to add about the advanced standing. You know, on the slide, you'll see that it says a prerequisite to Bachelor of Social Work. And it's actually a Bachelor of Social Work from a program that's accredited in CSW with CSWA. So again, going back to that idea of why accreditation is important, right? So we know when programs are accredited by CSWA that the bachelor students have completed certain content. So we can, you know, we feel confident in giving them, you know, advanced standing credit up to 21 credits. So in essence, some of those foundational social work building blocks in that generalist year that I talked about, the BSW students, they get that in their undergraduate program. So we don't make them retake it at the master's level as long as they've reached a certain academic threshold there. So just, again, wanted to point out that that's from an accredited program.
Thank you.
Nick, you want to go to the next slide? All right, maybe Lisa.
So
Time
yeah.
here.
Here we go. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Lisa DeLaMater. I'm the Assistant Dean and Director of Field Education for our BSW program and our MSW program. So welcome again. Apologize for this atrocious lighting that I have going on, but what can you do sometimes? So field education. Let's see. This slide kind of gives us an overview. So I'm going to go over the overview. I'm sure people will have questions in the question and answer, which is completely fine. Yes, the pandemic has certainly had some effects on field education, but believe it or not, some have even been positive, because sometimes crisis can kind of create opportunity and just push along changes that were already kind of there, and encourage and motivate folks to do things kind of differently. So field placement. Whenever you take first field, and I say whenever because if you're in the full-time program, it's in your first year. But if you're in the part-time program, it's in your second year, right? Whenever first field occurs, it's called your generalist placement. And the generalist placement is designed to offer learning opportunities in generalist or foundational social work practice across micro, meso, and macro learning opportunities. So yes, some work with client populations, perhaps also some advocacy work, case management work, linking folks to community resources, some agency-based projects around advertising, and recruiting and doing intakes at an agency. Those are just some examples of first field learning opportunities. Second field is considered advanced concentration field. So that is when you will have selected your micro or macro track. Your field placement will match the track of coursework that you're taking. So if you take and select a micro or clinical field placement, you will be in the advanced concentration clinical track courses. Same for macro. Second field, again, it occurs in the second year if you're a full-time student, and in the fourth year of your program if you're a part-time student. You see next to first field and second field, you see approximately 450 hours. So to Crystal's point about accreditation, CSWE, our accrediting body, tells us that all students have to accumulate a minimum, an absolute minimum of 900 hours within field practicums during their program. So generally speaking, first field and second field are broken into approximately 450 hours each. Every calendar year, the field calendar looks a little bit different, and it usually goes over 450 hours by at least a pinch so that we have a buffer involved. Again, I don't want you to have to worry about this, but behind the scenes, a big part of my role is making sure that you are meeting every single requirement. All of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed for your graduation and your ability to sit for the licensing exam. Okay. So that's first and second field in a nutshell. A couple of details I will give out because I know they're on your mind. Field education is 2 8-hour days per week. First field typically occurs on Mondays and Tuesdays, and second field typically occurs on Thursdays and Fridays. Yes, there can be some flexibility there, but only if that flexibility is asked for by the agency in order to meet agency needs, or try to have you at the agency for a specific meeting that only occurs once a week, perhaps on Wednesday afternoons. You have to interview for your field placement. And so you would have the opportunity to kind of discuss scheduling with your agency at that interview. But the 2 8-hour days during the work week are pretty much non-negotiable. And I know that that can be really tricky for folks who work full-time. So I simply ask that you think ahead and talk with your employer about these requirements in a way where hopefully they can work with you on perhaps even staying full-time during the program, but altering your work hours because they know that you going to graduate school is only going to better you as a worker in the job that you're working in. First field, students are placed into field by the field education team. Okay, you'll submit a field application, your resume, you're going to tell us a lot about yourself and what you've done, and we are going to select a placement for you that we think would be a good match and that will broaden and expand your horizons, both to introduce you to perhaps populations, types of agencies, settings you haven't worked or interned in before, and to also help round out your overall resume so that it doesn't appear that you've only kind of worked in the same exact type of agency setting or with a certain population your whole career, okay? Second field is exciting because students are able to select their own field placement. There's a whole process you follow. You have a mandatory orientation from us on how to find your field placement. And we have a huge field and career fair to help you do that. But you will be able to kind of zero in on the type of population, the agency, the setting, the location, geographically where you want to intern and find your own second year placement. So we also have a bullet on here for advanced standing students because fieldwork is a little bit different for advanced standing students. Again, as Geraldine indicated, our advanced standing students come to us with their BSW degree. That means you will all have completed a field placement in your senior year of your BSW program. In fact, some of you might be doing that as we speak. So you will only have one field placement assignment as an advanced standing student. You will pick the clinical or macro track. The field office will select that field placement for you. However, it's a bit different because your field application is going to tell us exactly what you're interested in, and we are going to try to match you with an appropriate agency for your area of interests, okay? Sometimes field education in that agency setting occurs over all 3 semesters, summer, fall, and spring. Recently, we have made some changes, and it is likely, it's not fully decided and determined yet, but it is likely that next year, students will be in field, advanced standing students will be in field in the fall and spring. They'll be taking a field education class, a skill building and a skill-based class in that summer semester. It's not really an academic class, it's very different, it's skills-based in preparation to enter that field placement. What are the little tidbits we put on the side? 900 hours minimum, right, to complete the MSW degree. I like to be transparent and say that evening and weekend internships are rarely available. I put rarely instead of never because it's not impossible. But I would say that there are perhaps 2 that have any evening or weekend hours for first field. There might be a few more in clinical settings, such as hospitals who have evening, or clinics that might have evening or weekend or overnight type shifts in hospital settings. So I have had second field students have a little bit more success at finding some evening or weekend internship hours. But what everyone should walk away with tonight is knowing that you would need 2 work days available to complete your field practicums. That's it for this slide. I know there will be time to answer field questions towards the end.
We also have one more slide too about field.
Yes. Yay. So I want to tell you about some of the exciting kind of specialized field options that University at Albany offers. So, block field placements. At this time, students who are going into second field, not first field, only for second field, can apply to complete a block placement. This means that, picture in your mind a traditional academic year is fall to spring, right? A block placement, sorry about that, might back up and start in the summer and end at the end of the fall semester, giving you the potential to perhaps graduate a semester early. So there is such a thing for second field students only to do a summer fall block and have the potential to graduate in December. We also have a really specialized block option. It's application only, certainly requires a type of professional maturity in our student to do a summer block placement, where, again, this isn't only an option for second field, but you would complete your entire field placement in one summer, going to field 5 days a week. So we have that option as well to also give people some flexibility to potentially graduate at different times, okay? I'm going to skip employment-based field for one moment and come back to it because I'm on the roll right now talking about second field. And the Internships in Aging program, as well as the Albany Internships in Mental Health programs, are 2 specialized application-only field placements, again, also only for second year students in their advanced year. So Internships in Aging offers, obviously, a rotation model for you to work with older adults. Field is 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week, with also a required seminar attached to the Internships in Aging program. There's a stipend involved because of the fact that you need to go to field 3 days a week. But we have a really thriving Internships in Aging, or IAP, as it's kind of nicknamed, since all we do is acronyms in this world, in the world of social work. Thriving Internships in Aging program, both for micro and macro students. We also have an amazing Albany Internships in Mental Health, which we call AIM program, that is also application only. And through that, you can get a clinical or a macro placement in an agency that performs evidence-based practice treatment models. This is a certificate program. There's also a seminar and a small stipend attached as well. So these are options that during your first year of field, you will start to get more information about and kind of decide if that's something you'd like to apply for. Employment-based field is a newer aspect of field education because our accrediting body, right, CSWE, the Council for Social Work Education, determined during the pandemic that in order to help students kind of get through their field practicums, they were going to allow us to utilize your employment as your field hours if you meet a certain list of criteria. So this is new to us, but we have been successfully utilizing employment-based field for 2 years now, and we will be continuing to do so. Students who have a job in human services would have to complete a field application showing us what are your job duties, who are you supervised by, how do your current job duties actually link and align with the social work practice skills or competencies that we are tasked to offer you in social work school. And based on kind of those answers, we can approve or deny someone to use either part of or all of their employment hours as field hours. Currently, students may only complete or participate in employment-based field 1 out of their 2 field placement experiences. So please know that if you choose to utilize employment-based field in your first year, you cannot use it again in your second year, or vice versa. And that is not to create obstacles in your life, but rather to be sure that I'm really giving you the kind of depth and breadth of field experience you will need in the short time you're with us before you graduate, by being able to experience working within a completely different organization. Because even if you choose to go clinical track, as you'll hear a lot in our curriculum, micro and macro are very intertwined. So it's just as important that you're aware of what's going on in the agency and the organization around you, and that you get to kind of observe 2 different types of agencies, even as you develop clinical skills. So we do have some exciting options that hopefully will interest some of you and allow you some flexibility. And we can take some more questions at the end.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for all that wonderful information about field. We also have a PhD program. Generally this is more for if you're interested in going into more research or academia. The MSW itself is a terminal degree. So if you want to do, if you want to do policy work, if you want to do clinical work, if you want to go open up your own private practice, MSW can do all of that for you and is the degree. Definitely if you're more interested in the PhD, we do have an upcoming PhD webinar on the 28th. If you don't know about it already, I'll send it. You can send me an email and I'll send it over to you. The link to it and everything. Any other comments? Dr. Rogers actually got her PhD from here. Do you have any other comments about our PhD?
I don't think so, other than, I just thought that the PhD that we give here, it is more research-based, and it really does prepare folks more for, again, the academy, a professorship or, research in a think tank. So some people want more of an advanced clinical degree. And I think that's what the PhD in social work does. But that's actually something called a DSW. Okay. So we just want to, if you're interested in that, to make the distinction between what is a PhD in social work and what is the DSW. The DSW is more of a clinical degree. But as Nick said, the MSW is considered the terminal degree, meaning that if you want to practice, the MSW plus additional licensing criteria that you could meet will allow you to do that. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, Crystal mentioned some licensing. Right when you graduate from here, you can get your LMSW, your Licensed Master of Social Work. That allows you to practice in most clinical settings, hospitals, nursing homes, schools. And then after 3 years of clinical practice with an LMSW, you are eligible to take another test for the LCSW, Licensed Clinical Social Worker, which allows you to do things like open up, your own private practice and supervise other LMSWs or other mental health professionals. Do a lot more independent, billing for insurance companies, things like that. So those are some of the different sort of licensing levels of a social work. So definitely, and we can go into more of that if you want in the Q&A. Yeah.
Nick, I'm just going to also add that one thing with licensing, I'm so proud. We really take advantage of our location, and that licensing is done by the Office of Professions through the New York State Education Office. So we take advantage of our location to downtown Albany, and we have kind of the head, the position is actually the executive secretary, actually come to our students either once or twice a year to talk about licensing. So our students really do get, a lot of really great information about licensing in New York State, the tiered system, and how to go about the licensing process.
Nice. So now we'll talk about some tuition. Next slide is more scholarships, things like that. And then we'll go into admissions related things and then your questions. So tuition, I see Emily's like taking a picture, like, all right, I gotta note this down. Generally full-time MSW, which means 12 credits or above, in the sort of tuition realm, is around 7,600. I put here tuition and fees. A lot of times UAlbany might tell you it's really like, oh, 6,700 in tuition, but they're not including the $900 of fees that you have to pay. So give it to you the whole thing. Tuition and fees, 7,600. Full-time, that's 4 semesters of that, equals about, $30,000. This is in-state. If you're out of state, it's about twice as much per semester. I'll send out there's the next couple of slides are going to have a few links like this that are linked. You can find those links. I'll post it in the chat in a few minutes. Actually, I can do it right now. So you can find those links. You can feel free to go to this after the presentation, afterwards. Go to those links. Check some of those links out. So part-time MSW, around 3,800 per semester, for what would be 8 semesters. So around $30,000 total. Might be a little bit more here and there because you might be doing some summer classes, a couple extra semesters here and there. Roughly 30,000 total for your MSW here if you're in state. A lot of students who might be out of state, if you're joining us, I saw like Indiana, things like that, who are joining us from out of state, can maybe move over here, live here for their first year, and then apply for residency. A lot of students will do this, pay out-of-state tuition for their first year, apply for residency, get their residency if they meet all those requirements, and then pay in-state tuition for their second year and beyond. Residency in New York State requirements, you have to be in the state, showing that you're living here and working here for 12 months. And there's a whole process at UAlbany. They work with students pretty well on that. So scholarships. So yeah, you have a pretty good range of different things. First off, right on our list here, Graduate Opportunity Program, GOP. That's if you participate in an EOP, HEOP, or SEEK. If you don't know what I just said, that doesn't apply to you. Generally, that's around $3,000 a semester off your tuition. Let's see, I think Geraldine was actually a GOP student as well. There's also the Carson Diversity Fellowship. This is essentially an extra essay on top of your application. You can find it in the funding information tab of your application. And it's essentially my elevator pitch of it. It's a longer, you'll find the prompt in that in your application in that tab. But essentially the elevator pitch is, how do you bring diversity to the school, the profession, beyond? Overall funding for this one from the last few years for master's students has been not existing, but it's potential. It's still a thing that's possible. So definitely apply. It is essentially a full tuition scholarship and an assistantship. And we'll talk about assistantships in a minute. That's the Carson Diversity Fellowship Program. We also have SSW scholarships. So those are available for part-time or full-time students. I saw Silvana, you mentioned, are there? For GOP, you have to be full-time. For Carson Car Diversity Fellowship, you have to be full-time. For the SSW scholarships, you can be part-time or full-time. We offer maybe 40 or 50 different scholarships to our MSW students every year through the School of Social Welfare. And those we send out more information on our scholarships to admitted students after they're accepted. And you can, make an application, and usually applications for scholarships are due around May. And generally SSW scholarships are a couple hundred to a couple thousand, so not going to be everything, but something. Let's see, we also have graduate assistantships. So that's kind of, think like working 10 hours a week for a stipend. Stipend is around $5,000. If there are some assistantships, for all the assistantships within the School of Social Welfare, around 10 hours a week, stipend of $5,000. Some assistantships are available also to all graduate students. So, and those range, some of them are 10 hours a week, $5,000 stipend, or 20 hours a week, $10,000 stipend. Overall, these assistantships are doing more administrative things. So in the School of Social Welfare, those ones within our department might be helping out in the help desk, answer emails, phone calls, helping in the field office, doing something similar. For those ones available to all graduate students, those might be maybe working for student events, helping organize undergrads to set up, take down for student events uptown. And some of those ones uptown for all graduate students even offer a tuition waiver for some of their assistants. So definitely take a look at those. You apply for those assistantships, all of those, after you're accepted. SSW will give you more info on some of those after you're accepted. We also have the Fafsa. Unlike undergrad, when you fill out a Fafsa, undergrad, you might get this, you might get that, like this scholarship. Really the only thing in a graduate school, no matter what your need, no matter really what your program, you're going to get like a $20,500 loan. You can take as much of it as you need. If you need more, there's more you can apply for, and that more is based on need. So that's your FAFSA. And then also, I'm throwing in some very new information about the UAlbany Graduate School, that they offer some more scholarships. I just learned about the Dean's Merit Award, that they will be now for the upcoming year. The Dean's Merit Award, essentially if you have a 3.4 average from your undergrad or above, and you're applying as a full-time student to any graduate program, they'll give you around $1,000 if you're a domestic student per semester off of your tuition. So that's pretty great. We also have the Great Dane Grad Scholarship. So essentially any UAlbany student who graduated from UAlbany who's applying to graduate school at UAlbany will get a $500 scholarship per semester off your tuition. So that's another thing as well. So those things, you don't even need to apply to those. It's super simple. They will sort of figure who's eligible, and right after you're admitted, the next few days, they'll follow up with an offer of those scholarships. If you have more questions on those, feel free to reach out to me. There's also more info on those opportunities and pretty much, graduate opportunity program, some of the other stuff above there at that link that I provided. More info on the above opportunities at this link right there. So, yeah. I also added a slide about housing. I know that, some of you all are from the area, some of you all might be moving to the area, but I did want to sort of throw in this slide about housing as well. UAlbany doesn't offer any housing graduate students, but there are a lot of rentals just in the downtown, around the downtown campus. This is a cute picture, I guess cute, not really, no, it's a picture of the downtown campus at UAlbany. So just within like a half-mile radius, even a quarter-mile radius, there's a lot of rentals. There's Washington Park right over here, which would be like below the picture. It's a wonderful park. There's lots of rentals around there as well. With your UAlbany ID card, you get free CDTA bus rides as well, so you can move around town quite easily. There is a housing guide as well that UAlbany provides. And there's also off-campus like Facebook housing groups. So there are some supports to help you find housing, but UAlbany doesn't really offer any like dorms or anything like that to its graduate students. So yeah, a little bit more about application stuff, and then we'll go into some Q&A. So applications, we require 3 references. We want those references to be in a professional relationship to you. So, you know, somebody who might be a work supervisor, maybe a, you know, academic, you know, professor. Ultimately, we want that person to speak to, you know, one of these 3 areas: your potential for professional social work practice, your experience in human services, and or your academic ability. So some of those areas. We also have all of that listed on our website. I'll send that out in a second as well. So if you missed any of that and any of the upcoming stuff or need it repeated, it's on the website too. Resume, just outlining, you know, work history, volunteer history, things like that. Post high school transcripts, you know, definitely if you were like, I took like 1 class over here, 1 class over there, we only need any transcripts that you've done 12 credits or above. So maybe if you did like 1 class over at this community, it's okay. We don't need that. But otherwise, all of your sort of undergrad transcripts, your personal statement. That's a few pages that we want. It's really a place where we want to hear from you. What brings you here and why? Why social work? Why the School of Social Welfare? Beyond that, we want to know, how do you engage in self-awareness in the service of others? How do you embody the social work values of social justice? And also, if you could comment on your readiness for graduate level coursework or field work. So overall, what brings you here, why? But, you know, beyond that, self-awareness, social justice, and graduate level coursework, field work. And then we also have $75 application fee. That's we're only able to waive it for students who are participated in EOP, HEOP, SEEK, also C-STEP, TRIO, McNair Scholars. And yeah, our deadline's January 31st. Oh, that should say fall 2022 or summer 2022. This is also our program page. So this is all of the stuff that I just kind of said about our application. If you click that link and then scroll all the way to the bottom of that page, you'll find all of that information there too. I know it's all the way at the bottom. I don't know why, but here we are. And that's the same link that's right there that I just posted in the chat. So additional application information, dual degree students, you have to meet application requirements for both programs. The MSW CRJ, Masters in Criminal Justice program, the same application as our MSW. The MSW on PH requires the application essay is a little bit more geared towards, you know, why the sort of intersection of social work and public health. There's also, you need like 1 statistics course from undergrad. Advanced standing students, we do require 1 letter of recommendation, needs to be from a field supervisor or liaison, basically someone who can speak to your field placement experience. You know, field director, some programs have a field director. We don't require any GREs. None of our programs do actually anymore. The MSW JD, if you're applying to the JD side of that, that requires your LSATs or some. But otherwise, even our PhD program, we don't require GREs. So yeah. So get your questions ready because we're almost question time. Definitely, you know, happy to field some questions. So definitely, if you do have any questions, we have our help desk. That's our email down there, help sswhelp@albany.edu, 518-442-5320. And yeah, so I'm gonna close us off the screen share. And so definitely feel free to sort of generate some questions, post them in the chat, raise your hand. I will get us started with one question that I think some people might be wondering. That question is like, how is things different in COVID? What is it like right now? And things like that. So I don't know, Geraldine, Crystal, if you'd like to comment.
In terms of academic coursework, it has shifted. Well, Crystal can share, like they had to shift like overnight to online coursework for everyone back in March of 2020. I'm sorry, I'm seeing your facial expressions like re-traumatizing. There was a really challenging time. Now we are back to in-person instruction for the most part. The school wanted to, required vaccination. But for most students, there were some exceptions that you could apply to. So some of our students may not be vaccinated. But there are still classes being held in person and then some online hybrid. So both online and in person or fully online. But we are an in-person program. So it's important to remember as you apply that there's no guarantee that you will have remote learning, so that you will be guaranteed seats in an online class. So I just say that because I know some of you may have come from programs where things were fully remote. So I just want to set that realistic expectation from here. I know for our graduate students, specifically part-time students, sometimes remote learning is ideal. So, there are some options available, but we are now fully in person until anything further. Hopefully there's no other unexpected changes, but it's been challenging. So you have to know your learning style. Are you someone that really learns from being engaged with other students? So you really value being in person? That's something that you want to analyze on your own. Can you really function and learn independently? Do you not mind that you're kind of teaching yourself content in some ways when you're signing up for online, fully asynchronous, which means you're not meeting at a specific time with the instructor? It's just like on a weekly basis, you hand in certain assignments and you learn on your own and through posts on an online portal. So that's some of the impacts of the pandemic. It really, like Crystal mentioned, I'll let her speak to more of like, it's been hard to engage with our students, more challenging to engage with our students in the same ways we used to. So we're working on that.
I'm just going to chime in quickly, and I hope Lisa will also chime in, because I think probably the field has been the most, directly impacted by COVID. But chiming in to add that for the most part, we are back fully in person. This summer, if you're taking summer classes, those are fully online. So those are all remote in summer of 2022. I think the university has also done a good job of kind of monitoring the COVID status of our students as well. So earlier in the pandemic, everyone had to participate in some type of surveillance testing. As Geraldine said, if you are on campus, if you come to campus, you are required to be vaccinated, with a few exceptions. There's a religious exception. And also, if you're not coming to campus, you don't have to be fully vaccinated. And again, we've learned a lot from COVID. I think most of our students, they've told us that they enjoy the in-person classes. But some of them are also really looking for online classes. So that's where Geraldine, to follow up on her point, it's so important to know your learning style. The online classes, they may sound convenient and they may be wonderful because like, oh gosh, my day is really crammed between working and childcare. So it was great to do this course. It's asynchronous. I can do it whenever I want to. But then it's like, ooh, this is actually a lot of work, or it's harder than I thought. So knowing your learning style is so, so important. And Lisa, did you want to say anything about the field in relation to COVID?
No. Okay, yes.
That kind of wasn't a fair question, sorry.
My nightmare of 2019. So, originally, of course, field placements were heavily impacted when the pandemic was really first escalated to actually being called a global pandemic. We had to pull everyone out of field and help them complete their field education, through alternate mechanisms. That was in 1920. So, currently field education is in person for this current academic year. And some agencies, either prior to the pandemic or as a result of the pandemic, are doing some of their work remotely. So it is also fine if a student ends up doing some of their field work remotely, but they cannot require a remote placement from the field office. So the field office is saying placements are in person, and if your agency happens to do some or all of its work remotely, those hours will count as field, because remote practice, telehealth, is never going to go away. It was already kind of coming along and creeping up before the pandemic, and it's a very viable way of reaching a lot of our communities that we can't otherwise reach. So telehealth, if your agency is practicing it, that's fine, but we're not purposely selecting or going out to find fully remote field placements for our students. That hasn't actually been a huge problem this year, except for the couple of students who are choosing not to get vaccinated, and we're unable to find field placements that would accept them with that status. And the field office can't do anything about that, where the agencies make their own decisions about their their requirements and about whether or not they will accept a student intern. So again, though, that was a very small number of students, and they had to either postpone field, maybe wait another year, see how they feel about the pandemic, the vaccine, if any of the agencies kind of shift or change their minds. But everybody has successfully completed field, even in all of the academic years that encompass this sometimes seemingly never-ending pandemic. And so the field office is just fully committed. We kind of never stop problem solving, and that's exactly what social workers do. So we're never going to leave a student stranded if their field education situation needs to change. There are some parameters within which we need to work, and we'll do those, and just keep open communication with you all about that.
So I know, I'm not sure if I'm going to say your name right. Enoch had a question that they wanted to ask. So feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, appreciate it. So my question is pretty much, what is the stress level as a social worker, considering you're going to work with people from like all walks of life? Like, how is life pretty much like as a social worker?
I think anyone, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask Lisa if she wanted to chime in on
that. Stop doing that, Crystal. Just kidding. So I think that's a great question. And actually, I love to talk about social work, the field, the practice of social work. I think, I always say that the MSW program is what you make of it. It's how much you put in is how much you're going to get out of the MSW program. And that is your foundation to go into the field. That can be a high stress field. So, I strongly recommend that folks really enter into the MSW program at a time in their life when you have kind of the full bandwidth, one of my favorite words recently, the kind of mental energy to put into giving your all and getting as much as you can get out of the 2 or 4 years that you're in the program. Because when you set that foundation bar higher, you are going to already have some skills going into the field of knowing what your own triggers are, what populations you might work best with, at least to start off with. You should learn through the MSW program what types of agency settings are best for you. Do you like to work in a really tiny space, a small grassroots organization with only 3 people working there? Or do you enjoy kind of being a little bit more anonymous and part of kind of a bigger organization that has more structure and more safety attached? These are all things that you should be examining kind of during the program and as you develop your professional identity. Self-care is a term that has kind of gotten really popularized, maybe overused a bit, but part of the MSW education should be figuring out who you are and whatever baggage that you bring into being a social worker, because we all have it, how that's going to affect you when you're front facing like this with a client, a couple, a family, a group, or even a community, if you choose the macro track. The macro track does not shield you from from the stress of social work practice, right? And the benefits from being able to kind of communicate and developing that self-awareness to know when you're being triggered. So I know we're kind of talking really specifically about what's it like to be a social worker. And I kind of linked it back to the program, but how you can kind of use the program to start building those building blocks for yourself. Being a social worker is amazing. It's also hard. Some days are better than others. Some jobs are better than others. Some supervisors are better than others. Some peers and colleagues are better than others. And the developing of your awareness of where you work well and who you work well with, not just what population you want to help, is going to help you in your career. And last, because I'm kind of rambling, I'm having the evening rambles that come up for me sometimes. But if you were to look at my resume, so Crystal said, I want you to get to know me. If you looked at my resume, you would be like, this looks disjointed. Foster care, mental health, academia, a hospital. But you can do all of those things as a social worker. It's how you choose to interview, and you tell your interviewer the thread of what are the practice skills or what led you from one population or one setting to another, or from New York City back to Albany, or whatever your trajectory is. But you can try different things until you find that sweet spot. Then being a social worker might still be hard, but it's in a supportive environment that works best for you. Okay, that was a lot. I'm stopping now.
Yeah. Enoch, did you want to say a little something else or clarify something?
Yeah, just on one more thing. So my question for you is, coming from a safety field, right? I'm coming from like a completely different field, right? My question for you is that would you maybe advise me to get an internship like within a social work area to pretty much gauge if I'm going to be successful? Because what I do is completely different, right? So I'm just a little.
I didn't know, was that meant for me? I didn't want to just speak over someone if you meant that for someone else. So I'll chime in, but if you want someone else to answer that, please, gosh, let me know.
I wanted to speak to the prior question, so when you're finished, Crystal, I can speak to, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Geraldine. One of the things that I really love about social work is that it does pull in from various fields, right? So we have some students who are coming in from other careers. We have people coming in from journalism, from education, from reporting, who come in, they don't have kind of what they would typically think of as social work experience, and they do just fine in the program. They may have years of experience in working with different kinds of people, right? And building relationships with other people or other systems. And so those are, again, really key skill sets. So it's not required that you have previous experience in social work to be in the program. Now, with that said, all right, I think there is a maturity that needs to be in place, because if you're coming in your first year full time, right from the get-go, you are in your internship, right? And you're going to be working with people. So, that bar there can be kind of high. So if you don't have, experience in social work. I think it's about having that maturity about you, and that openness and willingness to learn, right? And honestly, to kind of let the field office kind of guide you along the way, because they're going to give you a lot of material that will prep you for that agency-based work. So that's kind of my response to that. And Geraldine, did you want to go back to the question about practice?
Yeah, I don't know if this was, I was interested in drawing parallels between Lisa reiterating how important the social work actual education is and focusing on the program, and then how stressful social work can be. I think depending on who you are and your identity, the social work program and the field can be very stressful or triggering in many different ways. One of the pillars of our kind of practice in our field as social workers is social justice and the honoring of the individual. So depending on what cultural, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds you come from, there's going to be a lot of realities that you'll face that maybe you haven't thought about before. So in some ways, the program will trigger you to really turn a mirror and reflect on yourself and what are your understandings and versions of reality of the world and understanding of the world, and really challenge you to think about those in different ways and to really practice being empathic on different people's experience and being able, that maturity that Crystal really talked about, that can really guide you and lead you far within the social work field if you're able to balance that out with how stressful certain situations are. Like oppression is stressful. Seeing people being dehumanized is stressful. Racism, oppression, sexism, all of these things are stressful. But if you can show up as an individual and know your value, your perspective, then you can really respond in ways that are productive, that are expansive for yourself and for the populations and the organizations that you're serving. And, as someone that's witnessing more generations come in from all different various ages and younger generations, it makes me really excited to think about the new ways that we can develop social work. So that's something to really look forward to. So the stress, yes, it's going to be there. It's going to be there regardless of what field you go to. So it's really about how you show up. And I really love that Lisa said that. So I just wanted to kind of echo some of that.
Thank you. Lauren, I noticed your hand is up.
Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you. I'm just wondering if you guys could give us some specific examples of different internships or, field work that takes place in both the micro.
Yeah. And Lauren, I think your question also kind of echoes Teddy's question in the chat, where Teddy says in clinical roles at a, say, shelter or recovery center, you may have to work with and between government agencies, charities, advocacy groups in the clinical setting. Does one get any opportunity for this in the micro track? So, Lisa, maybe if you could respond to Lauren and Teddy.
Sure. So some examples of generalist or first field work can include interning within an agency such as a school, a homeless shelter, a jail, a nursing home, skilled nursing facility, an outpatient clinic, a doctor's office that has a social worker, right? There's so many different types of settings. Those are just some off the top of my head. It also, first field, also has an opportunity for a small subset of students to participate in a content area field practicum, which is somewhat like an independent study where you're able to kind of design a field placement with multiple field activities around your area of interest. And for examples in that field, we've had a small group of students interested in working with veterans, with the LGBTQ population, with immigrants and refugees, with community engagement and outreach, a wide variety. Because again, generalist or first field is going to give you, it should give you a wide cross section of micro, meso, and macro level work. Second field or advanced concentration field, if a student chooses the clinical track, you can find yourself again in a school, a residential healthcare setting, a mental health clinic, a hospital, for example, inpatient psychiatric unit, or a hospital medical floor, the oncology floor, things like that. Outpatient mental health clinics, licensed private practice clinics. Every county in New York State has a county mental health office. We have our second year students within all of those clinics. Greene County, every county you could think of. If a student chooses the macro track in their second year field placement, they are found actually still in a wide variety of agencies. We take a lot of advantage of being in downtown Albany. You can walk from downtown campus to the Capitol, believe it or not. So we have students in the New York State Office of Mental Health, Office of Crime Victims and Sexual Violence, Office of the Aging, OASIS, Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Services. Everything that starts with New York State and then has a population after it, we have macro students there. But macro students are also welcomed in a variety of even clinical agencies. So you might take a foster care agency such as Northern Rivers, and they might take a macro student to work on program design, program evaluation. We have a macro student every year at the VA, which is the Veterans Hospital here, which you think of as a highly clinical setting, and most of their students are clinical, but they do a lot of data management and research publication. Those are just some examples. And to Teddy's question, I think there's always an opportunity, no matter what track you pick, to ask your field instructor and get involved in the other side of social work at your agency. Because again, micro and macro, they just don't exist in their own vacuums or their own silos. They always interface. Was that sort of an idea of what you were hoping to get, Lauren?
Yeah, that's great. I actually work for Northern Rivers right now, so that's nice to hear.
There you go.
I have a kind of a follow-up question though, or two. One, are the internships, are they usually paid or unpaid? And two, oh gosh, I lost you. I'll have to put that. Sorry.
That's okay. Great question. The vast majority of field placements are unpaid, and there are a small number of field placements that can have a stipend attached. I have found that almost always occurs in second field. So more of the hospitals or clinics that might have grant money or some money budgeted into what you might think of as like residents, like doctors doing their residency and things like that. So I would be hard pressed to think of anything in the first year that has a stipend attached, but there are several, not just those specialized options that we talked about in the slides. Like those are programs our school offers with a stipend, but there are some just agencies and hospital settings that happen to offer a small stipend.
One more question, Lisa. I've noticed that Elaine, since you're kind of talking about field, noticed or said, if you have extensive work experience within the field of social work, can your experience count toward field hours? Essentially, can your previous work experience count towards field internship?
That is a great question. And again, in my interest of being fully transparent, that's a hard no. Don't hate me, but it's so that you know. We can't unfortunately count previous work experience or life experience towards field education. However, when you give the field office your field application, we're going to see what you've done, what's on your resume, what types of experience you already have and bring to the table when we're still trying to make you a match where you can still learn more. And like I always say, we have, to Geraldine's point, we attract a wide variety of students, which is amazing. So we get people changing careers or folks who maybe have worked in human services for 20 years and they're finally ready to pull the trigger and get their MSW degree. The risk can be that you might feel like you already know how to be a social worker. And so there's not much more to learn. It's just going through the motions to get the degree. And that's where a rub can happen. And we'll work with you on that, to say, even though a generalist field placement might feel like something so similar to what I've already done, you're simultaneously taking classes where you're learning new theories, new ways of kind of looking at that work that maybe you've been doing for 20 years. I always say it's like a new set of glasses. So you could even do your same job again, but looking at it through a different lens. And there's always kind of more levels and layers to learn. And to have that support of a supervisor sitting with you every single week to drill down into the issues that you're experiencing, both with your clients, but also with yourself, that maybe no one's ever drilled down into before.
Yeah.
So no, but it will have an impact on, placement choices and what you're able to bring to the table.
Yeah. And Lauren, one more question about field. You said what kind of support is incorporated into the program for field experiences? So you have field supervisors, the person who's there with you at your field internship, basically all the time that you're there, and you meet with them for 1 hour every week to like check in, see how things are going. And then you also have a field liaison, somebody who checks in with you once a month, sees how things are going, like how is it going, like problem solves anything. And then you also have the field office staff. So you have Lisa, you have Heather, and Makisha are also staff members at the field office who help, other issues that might arise, help place you in placements, things like that. I know that Colette had her hand up for a little while, so I wanted to get to you, Colette. So Colette, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you. My question might be more of an individualized one, but I'm wondering if maybe somebody might be able to provide some guidance for me. I graduated with my BSW in 1997, and I worked for a little bit over a decade. And then I have not worked for about 15 years while I've stayed home to raise my children, one of them whom has special needs. And so now I've been taking a couple of non-degree classes at UAlbany in the social work, school of social work. And I'm looking to sort of get together my application for this fall. Only I'm coming across some hurdles in terms of the references, because I have one professor that I could ask that from this previous semester that I've done, but my work and professional folks have kind of over the last 15 years like dissipated, and I don't know where I would go to meet the requirements for the professional, or even my academic. My previous Siena professors are just not there. I don't know where to find them. I don't know if they would even remember me. I can't be the first person to be in this situation. So what can you suggest of where I can turn to in terms of trying to meet that requirement?
Great question, Colette. And we'll get to your question, then Caitlin will get to your question. And then also if anybody else has any further questions, I'll put in the help desk email and phone, and also my email and phone into the chat in just a moment. But Colette, you raise a great question about like, hey, ultimately, like I said, we're looking for professional references, somebody who can speak to on a professional level. So, not a personal level, no, like, friend, like, so, alternatively, some students might be in the similar position where they haven't been working for a while or something like that, or are, still an undergrad, haven't really been working much, maybe did some volunteer things. So maybe like a volunteer coordinator. Could also be a great person, somebody who you might have worked at, even just alongside in some sort of a capacity, in a capacity of, volunteer kind of way. I don't know, Lisa, Geraldine, if you'd like to add anything.
Colette, I hear you. That sounds like a challenge, especially like during these times, who knows where people are. The only other thing that comes to mind is if you've had graduate coursework and you've worked on projects or through the coursework with colleagues, like classmates, and if they're professional social workers and they can speak to your work ethic and your performance in group work, that could be a possibility. It's the only most creative kind of strategy I'm thinking of right now. but definitely the volunteering. If you've served, let's say, I don't know if it would be acceptable if like you served on like committees at your
Yeah, like a
children's
PTA.
school or something. I don't know. Lisa, if you have any suggestions.
I was just thinking for Colette to make sure to discuss in the application, there's a spot where you can put any additional information at the end of your personal statement that you might want to speak to that's specific to you, and you might want to explain your scenario there.
Okay.
Just so that folks who are reading your application understand what those, or that it's not a gap in your resume, but even if your resume says childcare, but then why you might be having trouble getting the references, at least the context or perspective.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Glad we were able to elaborate on that answer.
Thanks.
Caitlin asked, what does the class schedule look like?
Classes are generally morning, some mid-afternoon, and then evening. So morning, evening, we take into account that first years have field on Monday, Tuesday. So we make the classes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Second years have field mostly Thursday, Friday. So we make the classes that they take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So there are morning, midday, there are several evening options, and it won't ever interfere with field. I don't know if that's specific enough, but there's a range.
Think like seminar style, once a week for 3 hours long is each class. You know, so like morning 9 to noon, afternoon like 1 to 4, evening like 6 to 9. There's also some online courses, some weekend courses like every other Saturday from 9 to 5. So it is possible, you know, if you're living from farther away, like maybe you can schedule it so you're doing courses just on Wednesdays and Thursdays or something like that. So, or if you want to work a lot more, like work during the day, you know, it's definitely possible to do more evening classes, you know, a couple weekend and online, sort of schedule it that way.
And
too.
we also take surveys, I think, of what time people prefer classes, what classes they prefer. So you have some say sometimes of the phrases you always get. You may not always get what you want in terms of scheduling, but you'll always have what you need in order to get through the program.
Yeah, you know, recognize it's time, you know, it's definitely a little past 6, so feel free if you need to go, feel free to go. I see there's a couple other hands as well, so we'll get to you and then we'll we'll close it off after that. So Nahemi, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. I noticed your hand was up.
Yeah, it's Nami.
Nami.
Yeah, so I just saw like if you were to do the internship in aging or like the mental health one, so being that that's 3 days, they're all 8 hours.
3 days for the internships in aging is 3 days, you know, a week in the field placement, and you get an additional stipend for that. And since you might be an advanced standing student, you're only eligible for the internships in aging, not the internships in mental health.
Okay, so then, oh, sorry.
We'll give more info on applying after you're accepted.
Okay, so I was just curious like how that works with your class schedule. Like, would you only be taking like 2 classes, 3 classes, or like?
You're taking the same amount of classes as everybody else. That's why you're getting that additional stipend, to sort of compensate for that extra day that you're in field.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there will be some remote classes for the spring. We haven't worked on the fall 2022 schedule yet, but there will be some remote for the spring 2022.
Yeah, and then we also have Colette who had your hand. I'm not sure if that was hasn't lowered your hand yet.
No, I'm all good. I just forgot to lower. Sorry.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, nice meeting you all. Thank you so much. I posted our, you know, SSW help email, my email, phone. You know, definitely feel free to reach out as you're kind of thinking more about the program. You thinking about applying, next steps, things like that. Happy to answer your question. If I don't know the, answer, happy to sort of connect you with somebody who might as well. Any last words from Lisa, Geraldine?
Thank you so much, everyone, and best of luck. And wherever you're meant to land, you will land there. And we hope to see you here.
All right. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Bye, everyone.